Hi, YouTube. This is my climate update. We're going to jump into it. We got a little bit of an update in Australia. And then we're also going to jump into a really cool video about how African leaders are not taking action on climate change. And of course, a myriad of things. You know, I've talked about this in the past. The corruption from, you know, African politicians is just expected. It's just, you know, it's just, it doesn't seem like there's ever an end to this issue. And of course, Western media is, you know, not Western media, but I mean, Western nations are absolutely to blame for treating Africa the way it treats them. But I don't think enough attention is brought to the inherent corruption of a lot of these African governments that is, of course, hobbling their own ability to, you know, to progress. Yeah, Chem Goblin. That's because you're intellectually curious, which is really great, you know. All right, let's get to it here. First story for climate change. Auckland flood victims wade through streets to safety. So just a little bit of just a little bit of, you know, B-roll just to show you. You look, you know, so the thing that's important to note about climate change and you know, about this is that it takes already existing weather patterns and catalyzes them. And sometimes in the case of La Nina or El Nino, completely flips them. So if it was supposed to be really, really cold, it'll be really, really hot. But in some cases, if it was supposed to rain, like if it's our rainy season, sometimes climate change will make that rainy season 4 times as bad, right? So that's what we need to remember, is that, you know, I think global warming has done a really, you know, big disservice to the debate, because it's obviously in some places it's not warming, it's an incredible cold, or in some places it's an incredible drought. It's like I said, it changes. It depends on the region. It depends on the existing weather patterns of that area. But as we continue to fuck with the, you know, biosphere, we continue to fuck with those mixtures of gases above us. We're going to continue to see this type of extreme weather. And I've talked about this before. It's very discouraging to think about how, you know, when humanity really does start to take this seriously, we're not going to see the dividends from our actions for decades. You know, this process has taken a really long time to get wound up, to get as bad as it is, and it's going to take a very long time to wind down and get better. So we're going to be investing lots and lots and lots of money, you know, into fixing climate change, and we're not going to be seeing the benefits of those changes immediately. And that worries me, because that's going to bring out a lot of nihilism in people. That's going to be, well, why should we spend all this money, right? You know, why should we, you know, force the government to force people to have solar panels, and, you know, force the government to force people to buy electric vehicles? You know, why do any of this if it's not going to work? You know, I'm not seeing any benefit, and I'm paying more for everything. That's going to be a tough debate to be had. Welcome back, Davey. All right, so jumping into our final video here on climate change. You know, look, I haven't seen it. We just found it right before I clicked record here, but I thought this was a great opportunity to talk a little bit about African news, which I did not have queued up today. So, tackling climate change, African leaders are talking and not acting. And like I said before, hopefully there's a bit of a focus on the inherent corruption of some of these African governments. Because I do think that is a massive impediment to progress. Tell me what you think in the comments. Like and subscribe. Today's stream's brought to you by Surfshark, my favorite VPN. VPN support. You got to use your VPN 24/7.
While developing nations are set to bear the brunt of the climate crisis, even though they've contributed the least to emissions responsible for global warming, A case in point, Africa accounts for less than 4%
Thank you for using
of
our sponsor,
CO2
Davey.
emissions. Now, this is all the more consequential for indigenous populations, which often have, of course, a much more direct reliance on the natural environment and its resources. For more, Hindu Umaru Ibrahim joins me now on set for Perspective, a member of Chad's Mboro pastoralist community. She also advocates for better inclusion of indigenous populations in the global discussion on climate change. Hindu, thank you very much for joining us.
Top 10 outfits, dude. What a cool outfit. I love the colors. She's beautiful. I love the earrings, the necklace. Love it, love it, love it. She's beautiful. Just love the outfit. Wanted to comment. Looks really cool.
Today.
It's a great pleasure for having me.
Could you start by telling us both about the Mboro community and how your experiences led to your activism?
Right, I'm coming from a pastoralist peoples. We are cattle herders, so we follow the rain. When there is rain, there is pasture, and then our cattle can eat because we depend from the meat and the milk.
No,
and we
no
are
subtitles.
the
Sorry,
solution
folks.
for this ecosystem because our movement around the place help the ecosystem to get regenerate. And that's what brought me to what I'm doing, because seeing my environment getting degraded, my people getting impacted by the climate change, so I have to stand up and fight.
Climate change, of course, is also a huge part of some of the ongoing conflicts in Chad. Can you talk about the relationship there?
Right. So as people depend from all the natural resources for the
She actually is really, her English is really good, but you know, her pronunciation is really unique because she's, you know, her language probably does the clicks and stuff. Oh man, those languages are really fascinating with the really quick clicks, and man, it's so crazy. It's so crazy to me. Those languages, like it, because like, you know, anyway, I can just get into it, but language, man, it's crazy.
Revival from the farmers to the pastoralists and the fisher peoples. So they are all depending from these shrinking resources. And when you take the examples of the Lake Chad, who used to be 25,000 kilometers square
Cam.
of fresh water, and now in shrinking 90%. So we have only like 2,000 or 3,000 remain there, and 40 million people living and depending on it. At the end of the day, they just fight each other to get access to the fresh water or to get access to the fertile land. And that is a huge conflict between the communities, and that brought the social cohesion between the families, and it's create also migration for our men who live the communities.
Is the Chadian government doing anything to combat the effects of climate change? Is there even a larger conversation amongst at least the political elite in Chad about how climate change is affecting the country and even the region?
So in Chad, we do have the Ministry of Environment as many other governments around Africa. And then through there is a unity of climate change that are creating documents, of course, as many other countries also, like the National Adaptation Plan, where they can project how they can change the way of productions through agriculture and through farming. But yet, there is no direct project that can impact the communities at the local level. Otherwise, we cannot talk about the climate impact. Everything is ending around the city with the conferences. But when there is a program or project that can go to like my people or other people who are getting impacted, this is not yet arrived.
What's your take on the COP27? Did it do anything to further the needs and demands of indigenous populations, especially given the announcements that were made on loss and damages?
For indigenous peoples, it has been very important to have the loss and damage finally adopted. It is the issue of recognition of responsibility from the developed countries who are the major emitters who take us in this pathway. And then finally, they have to recompensate those who are the most impacted. So this is the first step. But for us as indigenous peoples, we want to have the recognition of non-economic loss and damage. We are not losing our economic way of life, but we are losing our culture, our identity, our land, our places. So that have been very important. But they have to take the responsibility to reduce the emissions.
So she didn't really answer the question. She just kind of gave a long answer. It doesn't sound like they're doing enough. Well, she did answer the question. It was just kind of long. But because I think basically what she's saying is that when there's a new initiative, it will be implemented in the cities, in the larger cities, but in the more rural areas, the areas that she represents, none of that assistance reaches those places.
There's a lot of attention paid to what rich nations can do for developing ones, as we've said, with loss and damage. But what can or
and very quickly the conversation steers back to, okay, what can the Western countries do? And like I said, I do think that there is a responsibility from the West and all the first world countries to help Africa. But man, I mean, you know what I mean? It's just it really does feel like it's glossed over just how fucking corrupt your average African politician is. You know, fill in the blank of the region. It seems like it's just like that's just how things are done. It's just always going to be that way. I never see any kind of breakthrough when it comes to, you know, even Nelson Mandela. I remember watching Spitting Image. Nelson Mandela, they were characterizing him as a thief.
Are African leaders themselves doing to spearhead efforts? I ask this question because over 100 new fossil fuel projects are being planned for the near future across the African continent. Are African leaders doing anything, or are they doing enough to lead discussions on what changes can be put in place?
Okay, no, this is another question about African government corruption. Okay.
And say that African leaders doing talking, they are not acting.
Yeah, great. Because okay, yeah. So she's on the right page.
Cannot talk about the climate impact in senior peoples and the flood and the drought and the hunger because of the climate change, and without thinking about the fossil fuel, who is the driver of all the climate impact. They must turn to the renewable energy. They must turn to all the just transitions about our development. We cannot take the mistake of the developed world. And developed world actually cannot caution that. All the money that are serving to dig the soil is coming from the bank who are in the developed countries. So that need to stop and let us drive our economy in very carbon neutral way.
Now, speaking of that, in recent years, several African leaders, from Senegalese President Macky Sall to Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni, have called out the West for climate hypocrisy. They say that calling on African nations to...
This is very true, and this is a great, and you know, but here's the, okay, so what the climate hypocrisy, right? The first world countries are telling us to reduce our emissions while they release more emissions in one day than we'll release all year. And they're basically telling us we can't industrialize. We have to stay a third world country. And, you know, we're not allowed to have any of these, you know, we're not allowed to have an industrial revolution in our country because it'll be so bad for the climate change. But you guys were allowed to, and you're still polluting. Why, you know, why are we being hobbled? Why, you know, how come you're not helping us? And that is a very great and accurate question. I think that's a totally appropriate question. It's not an excuse to be corrupt, though. It's not an excuse to say, well, you see, yeah, they're hypocritical, so we don't actually have to do anything. They're not doing anything. It's not an excuse to not act, is what I'm trying to say.
To jump straight to green technologies while also funding new fossil fuel projects on the African continent to respond to domestic needs in the West is hypocritical. Is it realistic to expect that African nations, where hundreds of millions of people still lack access to basic electricity, can transition immediately to renewable energies?
And that's true. I mean, I'm seeing
they could if these first world countries, you know, spent trillions of dollars and invested, and, you know, and talk about capitalism. This is a great fucking opportunity to sell some shit, right? This is a great opportunity to, you know, accelerate this green economy, to make these things cheaper by, you know, the government putting in an order for 1 million solar panels. Right? What would that do to the solar panel market? It would make things cheaper, right? They would have to, you know, build facilities. It would create jobs. Let me tell you, folks, you can make a lot of fucking money. Let me tell you, folks, you make a lot of money, making people happy. You put a battery in somebody's car, okay, everyone wins out. The lithium mine wins out. The fucking battery maker wins out. Car maker wins out. People win out. Everyone wins out. And, you know, I get a little bit off the top. What can I say? I get a little bit off the top. I'm a businessman, okay? I'm a businessman. I take a little bit. You get a little bit. We all get a little bit in here. You know what I'm talking about? Hey, I'm talking about the green climate. Hey, talking about the green climate. Hey.
hypocrisy coming from the developed world who are funding the fossil fuel in Africa. If the developed world change the way of having the clean energy in their home, and then they stop funding the fossil fuel and fund directly the renewable, that will be like a little bit adjusted.
But look, they're corrupt and they can't line their pockets as deeply as they can with the oil industry, right? So it's quid pro quo here. It's really simple stuff. All right. If the green economy was the one, right, you know, filling their pockets, like, I'm not saying it's the perfect solution, because I don't think, you know, a capitalist solution is really the best solution here, but it's the best one that we got within the framework that we got to work within. You know what I mean? You're going to get farther in this current framework with a capitalist solution than you are with a fully socialist one. Let's be real. Let's be fucking real. Okay, and I want these solutions now. I don't want to wait for a hypothetical in 30 years when things get better. Okay, I want the now solution, and if the now solution has to be capitalistic in nature to get some solar panels on some roofs, right? I'll fucking deal with it.
Transition or climate justice that we are calling for. So our leaders are right to say there is a climate hypocrisy, but from themselves also they have to take their own responsibility. They have to lead by examples, saying that we cannot go into the fossil fuel, but you must pay for the right renewable energy for our peoples. In my community, for example, people do not have a car. They never turn a light in their life. So this is injustice. We are in 21st century.
It is.
So that must change by a small scale.
Yeah. I mean, you're asking people in mud huts with no running water or electricity to sacrifice, right? Oh, you can't have an industrial revolution. It's bad for the climate, honey. Sorry. And it's like, no, man, that is not a very fair proposal. You're not going to get very far with that proposal. Okay, especially if you're not coming with them with an alternative. It's like, well, are you going to hook us up then? No, not really. You're just going to have to figure it out. Not good enough. Sorry, we're going to burn oil.
Renewable energy in our communities that can help us to thrive.
There's no shortage of hypocrisy on climate issues. I think as a last question, I'd like to talk to you about the Davos World Economic Forum conference in Davos. You were there. While climate change was purportedly high on the agenda for this year's summit, it's also kind of the picture-perfect image of global inequality. Is it realistic to expect that any credible change will come from an event like that?
Davos have been very big on climate this year. Like the forum had 70% around the topics going on environment. That was fantastic. But when you just like turn and look at all the people around the room who are from the CEO, and you think about the profile that they want to make, so then for me, are they serious? So I cannot be
greenwashing. What she's talking about is greenwashing. You plan to stream some documentary? Yes, John Axel. Thank you for reminding everybody. I'm going to take a risk, and I'm going to do it tonight. I'm going to censor any parts that need to be censored in that Modi documentary that's going around, The Modi Question. So we will be doing a special stream on Sunday, tomorrow, showcasing the Modi question. The Modi government would like to censor this video, this documentary. No, tomorrow, Sunday. The Modi government would like to censor this video. And just as I did with the video game, was it Deception? That video game that China tried to ban. You know, so we had to do a special stream of that one. That was a beautiful video game, by the way. They have no right to be banning that. I wish I'd remember the name of it. It started with a D, something. So just as the same as we did with that video game, we're also going to do that with this documentary, The Modi Question. Look forward to that tomorrow, special documentary stream. So we're going to have a good time, but I'm going to have to censor it because I'm sure there's some blood and guts and stuff in it.
Sure about all the commitment in Davos until I see the action that they are doing on the ground. They are responsible. If they are really aware about what they have to take as decisions in Davos.
Devotion. Thank you so much, Chem Goblin. That was the name of the game, Devotion. Make sure you check it out today. It was censored by China. They just couldn't stand to see it. It's a beautiful game. Heavily recommend it. And the studio came out with a sequel. With some similar themes. Heavily recommend you check out everything from that studio. Really great stuff. And Davey, could you please post me a link to that? I think we should do an update on that one because that is important.
us. They must do that on the ground and show us in the next forum in
Actually, never
Davos.
mind. I have one in the Discord.
Hundreds of millions of people, if not more, are waiting for those responses. Hindu Umaru Ibrahim, unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. Thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Great pleasure having me. Thank you.
She was great. She was great. Wasn't she great? She was just amazing, folks. I loved her presence. Really awesome. Those overcoming killing Islamic State group leader. Somalia. I thought we had the video of Azerbaijan in here. Anyway, let me close up the YouTube video really quick. Get this figured out. There you go. There you go, YouTube. That's my climate update. A little bit of African update as well. I'll put that in the YouTube as one of the tags there to remind everybody. But yeah, I mean, we're not doing enough. We're not doing enough. And look, if the solution has to be capitalistic in nature to get this ball rolling until we figure out, you know, what parts of our society we actually want to be socialist versus capitalist and all that, I'm cool with that. Whatever. We need to do this now. We need to start this now. There's no more time to waste. Miami is going to be a wasteland, as well as, you know, coastal communities across the world, island communities across the world, the famines, the water wars. Okay, all these things are legitimate. Oh, real quick though, before I go on the climate stuff, Rob did have a link that I promised that I would show. So real quick here. Oh man, this music's fat as fuck. Big props to DJ Smokey. Adventures in Nightmare Land, full album. Make sure you check it out and like and subscribe. It's some absolutely fat shit. But the Americans' West Salt Lakes are turning to dust, and I've actually seen this with my own fucking two eyes driving through California. You know, driving through California to get to San Jose. I've never seen it this bad. I've never seen it this bad. I agree, Kem. Real quick, previous generations have lived at the expense of future generations. Exactly. The boomers have written checks that the future needs to cash now. And here's the thing, though. The resources are still abundant. We got so much. We got land. We got people. We got minerals. We got everything. We got it all, folks. We're not want for nothing. Now is the time to create the systems that are sustainable while we have all the resources available. That's where the impetus is. That's why this is so important. Real quick, let me just read a couple from this. From Rob, the Americans' West Salt Lakes are turning to dust. Last summer, scientists at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration observed dust blowing 85 miles from its source, Lake Albert and Summer Lake. Two dried up saline lakes in southern Oregon. This has happened before. Saline lake beds are some of the West's most significant sources of dust. California's Owens Lake is the nation's largest source of PM10, the tiny pollutants found in dust and smoke. While plumes blowing off of the 800 square miles of the Great Salt Lake's exposed bed have caused toxin-filled dust storms in Salt Lake City. Saline lakes are rapidly losing water to climate change and agricultural and urban uses. And this is very important. Modern farming needs to change. And this is a tough one for a lot of rural guys to hear. But the idea of miles and miles of open land and just throwing water and fertilizer and just throwing that shit around and keeping miles and miles and miles of farmland hydrated is becoming outmoded. Modern farming solutions, vertical farms inside buildings where hydroponics that use hydroponics to send water and nutrients down through the entire system are the future of farming. Oh, there's Davey with their Azerbaijan update. So real quick here, just a couple more paragraphs and then we'll move on. Becoming some of the West's most threatened ecosystems. Now, new legislation is offering some support. On December 27th, President Joe Biden signed the bipartisan Saline Lake Ecosystems in the Great Basin States Program Act. And I need to point out, there is a difference between Republicans and Democrats. Is this a, bill that's going to fix the problem? Absolutely not. It's probably filled with a bunch of loopholes and bullshit and band-aid solutions. But would the Republicans the Republicans would say this is not even a problem. The Republicans would try to make this problem worse, right? So there is a difference in these parties. And this kind of shit, shows that difference. Which allocates $25 million in funding for research and monitoring at saline lakes across the Great Basin. That's not nearly enough. While this funding is an important step, it cannot give the lakes what they really need, more water. The interior West is full of salt lakes created when snowmelt pools in the valley bottoms of the basin and range region. The valleys have no outflow, so the water remains until it evaporates, leaving behind the particles that were suspended in it. These accumulate over time, giving the lakes a high salinity. Quote, it creates a unique system that supports brine shrimp and alkali flies that can feed incredible populations of migratory birds. Interesting, said Ryan Houston, executive director of the Oregon Natural Desert Association, which seeks to conserve Oregon's high desert, including Summer Lake and Lake Albert. So basically a communist that wants to, take over the country with Cuba, according to a Ted Cruz type. All right, so one more paragraph. Yet this balance of runoff, salts, and evaporation also makes saline lakes highly sensitive to climate change. Decreasing snowpack and increasing evaporation due to higher temperatures means that there is less water in the lakes and a higher concentration of salt. That stresses shrimp and flies. It's just too much. It's too salty, which have adopted over time to specific salinities, and it also exposes dry lake beds, creating dangerous dust storms. So, once again, it's real. We need to do it, and we need to come to terms with the reality that this is our fight our entire life. This is not, set it and forget it. This is, okay, what am I doing for climate change this year? What's my, what am I trying to do to make it better for climate change? And of course, doing things your own self, in your own personal life is important, but applying political pressure to the oligarchy, which is polluting at 1,000,000 times more than you as an individual will ever pollute, is more important. Coca-Cola, Nestle, these companies that are polluting our waters and taking over and controlling entire, states' water rights, need to be challenged. Sure, of course, eat less meat. Being vegan is healthy. You don't need to be a full vegan. You don't have to even be a vegan at all. But you can, attempt to reduce your meat consumption. Try to eat more leaner meats. I'm cutting out the red meat from my diet. Almost complete. I'm going to try to go once a month red meat, and that's it. Butter knives. Well, that's probably because there were some rich people that have, some kind of incentive, right? So anyway, there you go, folks. This is my second outro for the climate section, but there you go, folks. That's my climate update. Come on, YouTube, step on over to the goddamn Twitch here and make sure you subscribe to my channel, everybody that's watching. I'm just going to keep doing this. I'm going to keep pestering you. I need to get 1,000 subscribers so I can stream on this fucking platform. There you go. That's my climate update. Thank you so much. Peace in that motherfucking Middle East. Like and subscribe.